The desperate search. In the vast wasteland of an Earth that had once thrived, Zara stumbled through the scorching heat, her throat dry and cracked. The sun above burned mercilessly, and the cracked earth beneath her feet seemed to stretch forever. Every step felt like a struggle, but Zara knew she had no choice. She had to keep moving. She had to find water. For years, the world had been dying. Pollution, climate change, and greed had drained Earth of its resources. Water, the most essential thing for survival, had become almost impossible to find. Cities had fallen, governments had crumbled, and entire civilizations had vanished. Now, the Earth was a barren wasteland, and those who survived did so in a constant battle for survival. Zara had been wandering for days, searching for anything that could help her. Her small water flask had long since run dry, and her lips were cracked and bleeding. Her skin, once tan and healthy, had turned pale and dry from the sun's constant attack. Her body ached with exhaustion, but her mind pushed her forward. She couldn't stop. If she stopped, she would die. She had heard rumors of a place, a secret location where water was still abundant. It was said to be the last untouched water source on Earth, hidden deep in the desert. Some called it the hydration beacon, a name whispered among the survivors who still clung to hope. Zara had no idea if it was real, but she had to find it. Her hope, like the last drops of water in her flask, was running out. Her eyes scanned the horizon, but all she saw was sand and rocks. The world had once been full of life, trees, rivers, animals, but now it was as though Earth had forgotten how to live. Everything was silent. Even the wind seemed tired, barely whispering as it blew over the desolate landscape. Zara's mind wandered to the past. She remembered the old stories her grandmother used to tell her. Stories about Earth before the fall, when there were lush forests and clear rivers. Zara had only seen those things in books, but she always dreamed of them. Now those dreams felt more distant than ever. She thought back to the day her village had fallen. It had been a small community, tucked away in the mountains, where people had lived off the land. But even that small paradise couldn't escape the ravages of the Earth's collapse. The water supply had dried up, crops withered, and the survivors had fought each other for the last drops of water. Zara had managed to escape the chaos, but now she was alone. Her eyes stung as she squinted against the harsh sunlight, her throat burning with each shallow breath. She felt herself faltering, but she refused to stop. She couldn't give up. Not now. Not when she was so close. Suddenly, in the distance, she spotted something, a shadow against the horizon. At first, she thought it was just another mirage, a trick of the heat, but as she got closer, the shape became clearer. It was a figure. Someone else. Zara's heart raced with hope. Could this be another survivor? Could they have water? She pushed herself harder, her legs aching, but she refused to slow down. The figure seemed to be standing still, waiting for her. As Zara drew closer, she saw that it was a man, tall and sturdy, with a face hidden behind a mask. His eyes were the only thing visible, dark and watchful. He didn't seem to be moving, but there was a sense of calm about him. "Water," Zara croaked, her voice barely a whisper. "Please, I need water." The man remained silent for a moment, his gaze never leaving her. Then, without a word, he reached into a small bag by his side and pulled out a flask. The metal gleamed in the sunlight, and for a moment, Zara's breath caught in her chest. Could this be real? Could this man have what she needed? He extended the flask toward her, and Zara's hands shook as she took it. She unscrewed the cap, praying that it was full. But when she lifted it to her lips, only a few drops dripped out. She drank them quickly, savoring every drop, but it wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. "More," she gasped, almost pleading. "Please, I need more." The man didn't respond. Instead, he stepped back, watching her with a steady, unreadable gaze. Zara felt a rush of frustration build inside her. How could he do this? She was dying of thirst, And he had the water right there, just out of reach. Why wasn't he helping her? But something about the way he looked at her made her stop. His eyes, though hidden behind the mask, seemed to convey something. Something she couldn't quite understand. Was it pity, indifference, or something else? Zara couldn't tell. She swallowed hard, trying to steady her breath, trying to control her rising panic. She needed to keep it together. She couldn't afford to let her emotions get the best of her now. Not when survival was at stake. The man finally spoke, his voice low and calm. "You're not the first to come searching for this water," he said. "And you won't be the last. But there's more you don't know about this place. It's not just about water. It's about survival. And sacrifice." Zara's heart skipped a beat. What did he mean? What was he talking about? She opened her mouth to ask, but before she could speak, the man turned and began to walk away, disappearing into the endless desert. "Wait," Zara called out, but her voice cracked with exhaustion. "Where are you going?" The man didn't stop. He just kept walking, and for a moment, Zara wondered if she had imagined the entire encounter. But then, as the man disappeared into the distance, she noticed something in his hand, a small, glowing object. It was a vial. And in that moment, Zara realized that her search for water was far from over. She had just uncovered a secret far greater than she could have ever imagined. The stranger. Zara stood still, her heart pounding in her chest. The glowing vial in the man's hand shimmered in the harsh sunlight, casting an eerie glow across the barren landscape. She wanted to call out to him again, but something held her back. A strange feeling crept over her, something beyond exhaustion or desperation. It was a sense of unease, a gut instinct warning her that she was about to step into something far more dangerous than just searching for water. But Zara couldn't afford to hesitate. Not now. She had to know what the vial was, what it meant. It was too important to ignore. With a final glance at the desert horizon, she forced herself to follow. Her legs felt heavy, her body weak from dehydration, but determination pushed her forward. Every step brought her closer to the stranger, the man who had saved her from dying of thirst, yet left her with so many questions. She found him a few miles further into the desert, standing beside a craggy rock formation. His back was turned to her, and for a moment, Zara considered turning around and leaving, but the thought of walking away without answers was unbearable. She needed to know what he was up to, why he seemed to hold the key to something so vital. "Wait," she called out again, her voice hoarse but full of urgency. The man didn't turn around immediately. Instead, he took a long, slow breath before speaking. "You shouldn't have followed me." Zara's heart sank. "I need to know what you're doing with that vial," she said, her voice trembling. "You said something about water and survival. What's going on? Why did you give me so little?" The stranger finally turned to face her, and Zara couldn't help but take a step back. There was something unnerving about the way he looked at her, his dark eyes full of secrets, as if they had seen things Zara couldn't even begin to understand. He studied her for a moment before speaking again, his voice calm and detached. "That vial is the key to the last surviving source of water in this region. But it's not just water, Zara. It's more than that. It's the last hope for humanity." Zara felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean, hope for humanity? What's in that vial?" The man hesitated. "It's a purifier, a system that can cleanse the toxic waters left in the Earth's crust. It can give life back to the land, restore what was lost. But it requires a sacrifice." Zara's mind raced. A sacrifice? What kind of sacrifice? The stranger didn't answer immediately. Instead, he glanced around as if to make sure no one else was watching. Then, with a grim expression, he reached into a pocket of his worn jacket and pulled out a small metal device. He handed it to her. "Take this," he said. "It's a tracker. You'll need it to find the hydration beacon." Zara took the device, her fingers trembling as she turned it over in her hand. It looked simple, nothing more than a small, unmarked disk with a glowing green light, but the weight of it felt significant, as if it carried the fate of the world within it. "But why me?" she asked, her voice soft with disbelief. "Why give this to me? You barely know me. You gave me water, yes, but why?" The man's eyes softened for a brief moment, and for the first time, Zara saw a flicker of something human in them. "Because you're not like the others. You still believe. You still have hope." Zara felt a knot tighten in her stomach. "I don't know what you mean. All I know is that I'm dying of thirst. You gave me a little water, and now you're telling me about some beacon, some purifier, and a sacrifice. I don't understand." The man stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "It's not about just surviving, Zara. It's about saving what's left. There's a group out there, a dangerous group, who would stop at nothing to control the purifier. They're the reason the Earth is in this state. They'll kill anyone who tries to unlock the beacon's power. And you have a choice." Zara's heart raced. "A choice?" "Yes," he said, his voice low and urgent. "You can take the vial to the hydration beacon and unlock the purifier. You can save what's left of this dying world. But doing that will cost you something, and you must decide if you're willing to pay the price." Zara took a step back, her mind spinning. This was too much to process in the haze of thirst and exhaustion. But she knew one thing for sure. This was the first real chance she had to save herself and everyone else who had been fighting for survival. This could be her only shot at restoring the world. She looked at the vial in her hand, the device still glowing faintly in her other. The weight of the decision pressed down on her. "What happens if I fail?" she asked quietly. The man's eyes darkened, his voice barely above a whisper. "If you fail, the Earth will die. There will be no more water, no more hope. It will all be gone." Zara's chest tightened. The pressure of it all nearly crushed her, but one thing burned bright in her mind. She couldn't fail. Not now. Not when the fate of everything she had ever known hung in the balance. "What do I need to do?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear rising within her. The man didn't smile, but something about the way he looked at her made her feel like she was the only person who mattered in that moment. "You follow the tracker. Find the hydration beacon, and when you get there, you'll have to make a choice. Give up your life for the purifier, or let the world die." He turned then, as if he had said all he needed to say. "Time is running out. Follow the path, Zora. But remember, there's no going back." With that, he disappeared into the desert, leaving Zara standing alone with the weight of the world on her shoulders. The deal. The desert sun had begun to set, casting long shadows over the barren land. Zara stood still, staring at the glowing tracker in her hand. The weight of it felt like the weight of the world itself. She had just been handed the key to humanity's last hope, and yet she wasn't sure she was ready to make the journey. She wasn't even sure she had the strength to make it out of the desert alive. The man, the stranger who had given her the vial and the tracker, was already long gone, disappearing into the wasteland without a word. Zara's mind raced, trying to process everything he had said. A purifier, a beacon, a choice that could save or destroy everything. With a deep breath, she decided that she had no choice but to follow. It was the only way. She couldn't go back to her empty, waterless life, not after hearing that there was a chance to restore everything. But she had to be smart. She couldn't rush into this blindly. She had to understand what she was up against. And if there was a way to find allies along the way, she had to take it. The tracker in her hand began to pulse gently, its light steady, guiding her. Zara started walking, her feet dragging in the sand, her energy already fading. The journey would take days, maybe even weeks, but there was no turning back. Her only option was to push forward. As night fell, the temperature dropped sharply, and Zara found shelter under a rocky overhang. She curled up, using her torn jacket as a blanket. Her stomach growled, but there was nothing to eat. She had grown used to hunger, just another part of survival in this new world. In her dreams, she saw the stranger again. His eyes were clearer now, as if he had shed the mask of mystery he wore during their brief meeting. But his message was the same: there's no going back. The words haunted her as she woke in the cold desert morning. There was something she couldn't shake, an unease that twisted in her stomach. She stood up, dusted the sand off her clothes, and followed the pulsing tracker once more. After 2 long days of walking, Zara's feet felt like they were made of stone. The tracker continued to guide her, but her body had grown weak. She was running low on water, and every step became a struggle. Just as she was about to collapse, she spotted a figure in the distance, a silhouette against the horizon. At first, she thought it was a mirage, a trick of the heat, but as she drew closer, the figure became more solid, more real. It was another person, a woman dressed in tattered clothes, with a face that showed years of hardship. She was holding a large container, something that could hold enough water to quench Zara's thirst, and then some. Zara's heart skipped a beat, her mouth suddenly dry. She approached cautiously, not sure if the woman was friend or foe. The woman noticed her and stopped walking. She looked at Zara with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. "You lost?" the woman asked, her voice rough from the desert's harsh conditions. Zara swallowed, trying to steady her breath. "I'm not lost," she said, her voice raspy. "But I am looking for something. A hydration beacon. A purifier that could save this whole region. Have you heard of it?" The woman narrowed her eyes. She seemed to be weighing Zara's words carefully. Finally, she nodded. "I've heard the stories. Some say it's a myth, some say it's real. But the ones who search for it, well, they don't always come back." Zara's pulse quickened. "I need to find it. I have a tracker that will lead me there." The woman's expression softened slightly, though suspicion still lingered in her eyes. "That tracker won't get you far if you don't have the right help. The red zone is a death trap, and you're not the only one looking for it." Zara frowned, confused. "What do you mean? Who else is looking for it?" The woman's voice dropped lower, her gaze flicking nervously to the horizon. "There's a group. They're dangerous. They'll kill anyone who gets in their way. They know about the purifier, and they want it for themselves. They've been hunting anyone who tries to reach the hydration beacon. They want to control it, to keep it all for themselves." Zara's mind spun. She had heard whispers about ruthless groups that fought for resources in the wasteland, but this was different. Whoever controlled the purifier would control everything. It was more than just survival. It was power. "Then we need to get there first," Zara said firmly. "I can't let them have it. We can't let them have it." The woman studied Zara for a long moment. Then, with a sigh, she nodded. "All right, kid. I'll help you. But this isn't going to be easy. You'll need more than just a tracker to survive this." Zara's heart lifted with a glimmer of hope. For the first time since she had left her village, she wasn't alone. But she knew it wasn't going to be that simple. Trust didn't come easily in the wasteland, and if this woman was going to help her, there had to be a catch. "What's the price?" Zara asked, eyeing the woman carefully. The woman smirked, showing a glimmer of something, maybe a memory of better times. "You'll need to get me something in return. The group I'm running from. They have something I need, something I lost. I'll help you, but you'll owe me." Zara hesitated. She didn't have much to offer, but the purifier, the water, was the only thing that mattered now. "What do you need?" The woman's eyes hardened. "The same group that's after the purifier took something from me. I'll help you find a hydration beacon, but we'll need to stop them first." Zara felt a pang of uncertainty in her chest, but she knew she didn't have any other options. This was the deal she had to make. "All right," Zara said, nodding. "Deal. Let's take them down." The woman extended her hand. "Name's Ilara. Let's hope you're ready for the fight." Zara took her hand, feeling the weight of the decision settle over her. This wasn't just about water anymore. It was about survival, power, and revenge, and she was ready to do whatever it took. The red zone. The wind howled through the canyon, stirring up the dust and sand, making it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. Zara squinted against the harsh wind as she and Ilara pressed forward, the tracker's green light guiding them like a distant star in the vast emptiness. The red zone lay ahead, a dangerous and deadly place, a place few dared to enter, and even fewer returned from. But if they were going to find the hydration beacon, this was the only path to take. The red zone wasn't just a stretch of desert. It was a forgotten battlefield, littered with the remnants of old wars and the technology that had once been used to defend what remained of Earth's resources. Automated drones, sentinels built to protect the last of humanity's secrets, still roamed the area, their programming still intact even after the fall of civilization. Zara's breath hitched as she glanced at the horizon. There was something eerie about this place, something alive in the silence. "You've been here before," Zara said, her voice tight as she glanced at Ilara, who was walking with a steady, almost casual pace. Her eyes were sharp, scanning the landscape, every rock, every shadow, as if she had walked this path 100 times. "Not many make it through the first time," Ilara replied, her voice low but firm. "But I know the way. Stay close and keep quiet. The drones are out there, watching. If we're lucky, they won't see us. But if they do, we won't survive." Zara nodded, her pulse quickening. The quiet was unsettling, like the calm before a storm. She had heard stories of the drones, machines built to protect valuable resources, but she had never seen one in person. She had only heard the rumors, silent death from the sky, precise and merciless. Now she was about to walk right into their territory. The wind died down suddenly, and the air felt thicker, colder. They had reached the heart of the red zone. Zara could feel the presence of something watching them, but she couldn't see it. Not yet. "Where is it?" Zara asked, trying to steady her voice. Her throat was dry, and the tracker's green light was growing faint, pulsing more slowly. "Ilara, how far is the hydration beacon?" Ilara didn't answer immediately. Instead, she crouched down, her eyes scanning the horizon. Zara followed her gaze but saw nothing. The air felt still, too still. "It's close," Ilara said, her voice now barely above a whisper. "But we're not alone. They're already here." Zara's heart skipped a beat. "Who?" Before Ilara could respond, a loud hum echoed through the air. Zara froze, her body tensing. The sound grew louder, a low, mechanical thrum that vibrated in her chest. It was a drone. She could feel it. Then, out of nowhere, a sleek black shape appeared in the sky above them, moving faster than anything Zara had ever seen. The drone was hovering just above the ground, its sensors scanning, its metal body gleaming in the dim light. Zara's breath caught in her throat, and she took a step back, but Ilara's hand shot out to stop her. "Stay still," Ilara ordered, her voice a low hiss. "Don't make a sound." The drone's sensors flickered, scanning the area. Zara held her breath, her pulse thundering in her ears. She could feel the weight of the machine's gaze on them, its unblinking eyes searching the area. For what felt like an eternity, the drone hovered silently, its presence a constant reminder of the dangers lurking in the red zone. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the drone turned and flew away, disappearing into the sky. Zara exhaled, the tension leaving her body in a rush. She glanced at Ilara, who was already moving again, her pace quick but controlled. "Close," Ilara muttered under her breath, "but not close enough. The drones are getting smarter. They know we're here." Zara didn't need to be told twice. She followed Ilara as she led the way, moving quickly but quietly, staying low to the ground. The terrain was jagged and uneven, filled with sharp rocks and deep ravines. Every step felt like a risk, and Zara couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. She kept her eyes on the tracker, which was now pulsing more rapidly, signaling that they were getting closer. But with every step, the air grew colder, and the silence grew heavier. They passed old ruins, crumbling buildings, and broken walls that had once housed laboratories, military installations, and research facilities. The remnants of humanity's last hope for survival now lay in ruin, abandoned and forgotten. As they continued, a faint glow appeared in the distance. It was soft at first, like a flicker of light, but as they drew closer, the glow grew stronger, brighter. It wasn't just the tracker's light, it was something else. "That's it," Ilara whispered, her voice urgent. "That's the hydration beacon." Zara's heart raced as they approached, her steps quickening. The beacon was a towering structure, unlike anything she had ever seen. It looked like a monument, ancient and futuristic all at once, covered in intricate designs and symbols Zara couldn't understand. But at the center of it was a large, spherical object that glowed with an unnatural blue light. As they drew closer, Zara could feel the pull of it, the promise of water, of life, just within reach. But before she could take another step, a sudden crash echoed from behind them. Zara spun around to see a group of figures emerging from the shadows, dark, hooded, and armed. It was the group Ilara had warned her about. "Did you think you could just walk in and take it?" One of them sneered. He was tall, his face obscured by a hood, but Zara could see the glint of a weapon in his hand. Ilara stepped in front of Zara, her posture rigid and defensive. "We've come this far. You'll have to go through me." The leader of the group smirked. "That's exactly what we had in mind." Zara felt her heart race. The hydration beacon was right there, just ahead of them, but now it was surrounded by enemies. The choice had never been clearer. They couldn't let this group take control of the beacon. Not now. Not after everything they had fought for. "Ready for a fight?" Ilara asked, her voice low. Zara nodded, her body tense with adrenaline. "Let's finish this." And with that, the battle for the beacon began. The truth. The air crackled with tension as the group of hooded figures closed in on Zara and Ilara. Zara's fingers gripped the tracker tightly, her heart pounding in her chest. The hydration beacon stood just ahead of them, but every step felt like a step closer to danger. She didn't know how many enemies they were facing, but the leader's smug smile told her they were more than prepared for a fight. "We don't want trouble," Ilara said, her voice firm but calm, her body poised for action. "But if you stand in our way, we'll make sure you regret it." The leader's eyes gleamed with malice as he stepped forward, raising his weapon. "You're too late," he said coldly. "The beacon is ours. No one else will have it. Not even you." Zara's gaze flicked nervously between Ilara and the leader. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Was she ready for this? Could they defeat these men and unlock the beacon's power, or would they fail, like so many before them? The leader made a sharp gesture, and the rest of his group moved in sync, spreading out to surround them. Zara's eyes darted between them, trying to assess their numbers. There were at least 6 of them, too many for a fair fight. Her chances of surviving this were slim, and she knew it, but giving up was not an option. "Move," Ilara shouted, pulling Zara back and pushing her toward the beacon. She turned to face the attackers, her knife drawn, her eyes fierce. Zara hesitated, unsure what to do. The beacon was right there, but there was no way to reach it without being caught in a crossfire. She needed to do something, anything, to help Ilara. Suddenly, a thought struck her, a memory, something the stranger had said. "You still believe. You still have hope." The words rang in her ears as if they were meant for this moment. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the glowing vial that Ilara had helped her find. She held it up, feeling the strange warmth that radiated against her palm. Without thinking, Zara rushed toward the beacon, heart pounding, her mind set on one thing only: activating the purifier. The vial felt alive in her hand, its glow growing stronger with each step. She could hear the leader's voice behind her, yelling for her to stop, but she didn't care. She had to trust that this was the right choice. As she reached the center of the beacon, she placed the vial into the glowing slot in the middle of the structure. The ground beneath her feet trembled, and the air around them seemed to hum with energy. The attackers froze, their eyes wide with disbelief. "No," the leader snarled. "You don't know what you're doing." Zara didn't answer. She could feel the pulse of power from the beacon, the rush of energy flowing through her. And the moment the vial clicked into place, the beacon's light blazed brightly, illuminating the red zone like a beacon of hope. Then, everything changed. The entire area around the beacon began to shake, and Zara's legs nearly gave out as the ground trembled beneath her. The air was thick with energy, and the sound of a low, powerful hum filled the air. It was as though the beacon itself had awakened after centuries of slumber. The leader and his group were no longer smiling. They looked panicked, and Zara could feel the intensity of their fear. But it wasn't the beacon they were afraid of. It was something else, something deeper. They weren't here for the purifier. They were here for the secret that the beacon held. Zara turned, her eyes wide with confusion. "What's happening? What did we just activate?" Ilara stepped forward, her expression unreadable. "The beacon. It's not just a purifier. It's a weapon." Zara's heart skipped a beat. "A weapon?" Ilara nodded gravely. "The hydration beacon was created to restore the Earth's water, yes. But it was also designed to defend itself, to ensure that the resources it protected, water, energy, life, would never fall into the wrong hands. The beacon is part of a larger system of defense mechanisms built by the old government. It was designed to protect the last of humanity's most valuable resources from any threats, and that includes people like them." The attackers took another step forward, their weapons raised. The leader, his face now twisted with rage, shouted, "You don't understand. You've unlocked something you can't control. You think this will save you. It will destroy everything." But Zara didn't understand. "What are you talking about? I activated the purifier. We're supposed to restore the water, to save everyone." Ilara stepped closer to Zara, her face serious. "The purifier will restore the water, but it's also linked to the global defense network. When you activated it, you triggered a signal that not only unlocked the purifier, it also activated the last defense protocols. The beacon is now protecting the world's most important resources, and everyone who stands in its way." The leader sneered. "Fools! You have no idea what you've just done. This machine is not a blessing. It's a curse. And now you'll see just how far we're willing to go to stop you." Suddenly, the ground beneath them rumbled again, and the sound of machinery whirring to life echoed through the air. In the distance, Zara could see massive walls rising from the desert floor, walls of metal, armored and thick, designed to protect the beacon. They were being trapped. The defense system had been triggered, and there was no turning back now. Zara's mind raced as she tried to process everything. The beacon was more than just a purifier. It was a weapon. And now it had turned against everyone who had come to claim its power. "Ilara," Zara whispered, panic rising in her chest. "What do we do now?" Ilara's eyes met hers, and for the first time, Zara saw a glimmer of fear in her eyes. "Now we fight, and we pray that we can survive long enough to make it out of here." The attackers took another step toward them, but the ground continued to shake as the automated defenses began to come online. It wasn't just the beacon they had unleashed, it was a war. And Zara realized then that this fight was only just beginning. The sacrifice. The ground trembled beneath Zara's feet as the massive walls around the hydration beacon rose higher, closing them in. The once barren desert now felt like a fortress, a prison of metal and technology, alive with the hum of machines. The beacon's light pulsed brighter with each passing second, and the low rumble of the defense systems echoed like a warning. Zara's heart raced as she glanced at Ilara, whose face had gone pale, her eyes scanning the rapidly closing walls. The leader and his group of mercenaries had fallen back, but they weren't giving up. They were regrouping, preparing for their next move. "Ilara," Zara whispered, feeling the weight of the moment settle heavily on her chest. "What's going to happen? What did we just unleash?" Ilara's gaze was distant, but sharp. She was calculating, thinking through their options. Her hand gripped her knife tighter, the last of her resolve solidifying. "We've triggered the beacon's defense system. It's designed to protect this place at all costs. If it senses a threat, it locks down everything. The beacon will restore the water, but only for those who control it. And that's why these men are here. They want it for themselves." Zara's mind spun. "So we've activated the purifier, but now we're trapped. We can't stop it." "We can't stop it directly," Ilara said, her voice tense. "But there's still a way. The system can be overridden by someone who understands how to manipulate its core. If we can reach the control center inside the beacon, I might be able to shut it down. But getting there means facing the full force of the defense system, and that's where you come in." Zara's brow furrowed, confusion flooding her. "What do you mean? I'm just a—" "You're the one who activated it," Ilara interrupted. "The beacon's core recognizes you now. It responds to you. If anyone can override the security protocols, it's you." Zara took a step back, the weight of Ilara's words sinking in. She had unlocked something far greater than she had intended. But how could she shut it down now? What if it was too dangerous? What if the choice was too big for her to make? "How do I do it?" she asked, her voice shaky but determined. Ilara met her eyes, her expression serious. "The control room is inside the beacon. We have to make it past the defense perimeter. Once inside, I can guide you through the system. But there's one more thing you need to know." She paused, her gaze hardening. "The beacon doesn't just protect water. It also protects its operator. If you go inside, you'll be exposed to a series of security measures. Once you activate the override, it'll stop protecting you. The defense systems will treat you as an enemy." Zara's blood ran cold. "So if I go in, I'll be on my own?" "Yes," Ilara said, her voice softer now. "And once you make the choice to override, the beacon systems will trigger a shutdown. It's a one-way process, Zara. There's no turning back. You can't just stop halfway. The beacon will either be fully activated, or it will go dark. If you fail, it could destroy everything." Zara's breath hitched as she tried to comprehend the magnitude of what Ilara was asking. She was being asked to take control of something that could change the world, to either save it or doom it. Could she be the one to make that decision? "How much time do we have?" Zara asked, feeling the seconds slip away. Ilara glanced at the walls closing in around them. "Not long. The system is already preparing to lock us in. We have to move fast." Before Zara could respond, a loud crash echoed from the distance, and the attackers surged forward. The mercenaries had regrouped and were closing in, their weapons raised, ready to fight. Zara looked over her shoulder and saw the enemy leader, his eyes blazing with anger. "We're running out of time," Ilara urged. "Zara, you need to decide. The longer we wait, the more dangerous it gets." Zara felt a weight settle in her chest as she looked at the advancing threat. She had no choice. The beacon wasn't just about water. It was about control, power. If she didn't act, the mercenaries would seize it and use it for their own ends. If the beacon fell into the wrong hands, it would become the last weapon of tyranny, not salvation. Zara turned to Ilara, her eyes full of determination. "I'm going in." Ilara's eyes softened with a mixture of pride and fear. "I'll cover you. Go." Without another word, Zara sprinted toward the base of the beacon, her heart pounding in her chest. The ground shook beneath her feet as she neared the entrance, the doors already beginning to close. She could hear the distant sounds of the mercenaries closing in, the snap of gunfire echoing in the distance as Ilara fought to hold them off. Zara didn't hesitate. She dashed into the opening, slipping through just as the door began to close behind her. The inside of the beacon was dark and metallic, a labyrinth of corridors filled with cold, humming machinery. The walls seemed to pulse with energy, as if the structure itself was alive, watching her every move. Ahead of her, a bright red light flashed, signaling the core control room. She knew that was where she needed to go, but each step felt heavier than the last. The walls closed in, the pressure of time, and the weight of the decision pushing her forward. The path ahead was clear, until the first blast of energy struck the walls near her. The defenses had already been triggered. Zara sprinted down the hallway, her feet pounding against the cold metal floor. A series of automated drones appeared from the shadows, their red eyes glowing with malice. She dove behind a pillar as a blast of energy shot past her, the force shaking the entire hallway. She wasn't going to make it. She couldn't outrun them. But then she remembered the vial, the one thing that had brought her here. She reached into her pocket and pulled it out, holding it tightly in her hand. The vial was still glowing faintly, as if it had a will of its own, guiding her. Without thinking, she threw it toward the drone nearest her. The explosion of energy was immediate, a surge of light that shattered the drone into pieces. Zara didn't stop to look back. She kept running, pushing herself harder, until she reached the control room's entrance. With a single motion, she activated the door. Inside, the air was thick with power. At the center, the control system for the beacon lay exposed. Wires, panels, and glowing screens, all pulsing with energy. Her fingers trembled as she approached the central terminal. The countdown was already in progress. The decision was now or never. With a steadying breath, Zara connected the tracker to the console, and a sharp beep echoed in the room. The entire beacon began to rumble as the energy from the purifier surged toward her. Then came the voice, deep and cold. Override accepted. Sacrifice required. Zara's eyes widened. She had one choice left. The last drop. The moment Zara connected the tracker to the beacon's central console, everything changed. The room filled with a low hum, vibrating through the metal floors and walls like the pulse of a living thing. The control system flickered to life, lines of code racing across the screens, each one representing a part of the beacon's complex, ancient network. The machine had been dormant for so long, too long, but now it was awake, and it was waiting for her. Her fingers trembled as she activated the command to override the beacon's security protocols. But the words that appeared on the screen sent a shiver down her spine. Sacrifice required. Zara's breath caught in her throat as the room seemed to darken around her. The message was clear. The beacon would only work at full capacity if she gave something in return. The purifier, the one thing capable of restoring the world's dying waters, would come at the ultimate cost. Her heart raced, her mind spinning. She had to make a choice, and there was no going back. What does it mean? Zara whispered to herself, her voice barely a breath. She had no answers, only the looming decision ahead. The message pulsed in red, the beacon's systems growing louder and more insistent. It was as if the entire machine was holding its breath, waiting for her to make the impossible decision. Outside, the sounds of the mercenaries' pursuit grew louder. Ilara's voice echoed in her mind, reminding her of the danger. The walls were closing in. The attackers would soon breach the outer defenses, and if Zara didn't act, the beacon would fall into their hands. She had to do this. But the sacrifice, what was she willing to give? Zara. Ilara's voice cracked through the comms, breaking her from the haze. We don't have much time. They're almost here. Zara closed her eyes for a moment, steadying her breath. She had already come so far. She had triggered the purifier. She had brought hope to the world, even if it had come with a price. Time's up. The cold, mechanical voice from the beacon announced. Sacrifice required. Initiating purification sequence. Suddenly, the room seemed to pull her in. The walls vibrated harder, and Zara felt a surge of heat rush through her. The purifier was powering up. Its core came to life with an overwhelming light that illuminated every corner of the room. And in the heart of it, the vial she had carried, the glowing object that had been her key to this moment, began to glow brighter than ever before. Zara reached out instinctively, her hand trembling as it hovered over the console. The beacon's voice continued, but now it was almost like a chant, rhythmic and cold. Sacrifice. Life force required. Zara's eyes widened as the truth hit her like a sudden wave. The sacrifice wasn't something she could give. It wasn't a choice of giving her water or energy. It was her own life. No, she thought, heart pounding in her chest. I can't die. I can't leave the world in the hands of these men. But the message was clear. To restore the water, to save the land, she would have to give up her life's force. Her life energy would fuel the purifier. The beacon would continue, and the world would be saved, but she would be gone. A sharp, burning pain shot through Zara's chest, as though her very soul was being pulled from her body. The machine had begun its extraction, and there was no turning back. Her vision blurred, and she fought to stay conscious. I can't do this. I can't just. But then a memory flashed before her, the faces of the people she had left behind. Her village, her family, her people. They had struggled, just as she had, to survive in a world that had no mercy. She had been willing to give everything to help them, to find a solution. This was that solution. Her breath hitched, and the sharp pain intensified. She could feel the pulse of the purifier, the system drawing from her very essence. It's too late to stop now. The world needs this. She felt something inside her crack, a tear, a final shudder of life. And then, as if by instinct, she made the choice. She closed her eyes and whispered softly, "For them." The beacon's light surged. For a brief, impossible moment, Zara felt herself float, suspended between worlds. Her body was weightless, her mind far away, but her heart remained tethered to the one thing she had fought for: the survival of humanity. Outside the beacon, the walls that had risen to encircle the area began to recede. The automated defense systems powered down, their threat nullified. The mercenaries, who had been closing in for the kill, stopped in their tracks as the sky above them began to shift. A soft drizzle fell from the sky. Just a few drops at first, but it was enough to stop them in their tracks. The rain was a miracle. It hadn't fallen in years. The leader of the mercenaries cursed under his breath. He had been so close. But now, the world was changing. The very thing they had fought for, the thing they had thought they could control, was slipping away from their grasp. As the rain began to fall harder, the mercenaries scattered, retreating into the desert. The beacon's hum echoed into the distance, and in the heart of the hydration beacon, Zora's lifeless body lay still, but her sacrifice had been enough. Back at the edge of the wasteland, where the last of the survivors had gathered, a soft cheer erupted as the first real rainstorm in years began to quench the earth. People looked up to the sky with wide, astonished eyes, as the clouds seemed to part and reveal a world that was slowly healing. The purifier had worked. It was working. Zora's story would be told for generations, not as a tale of sorrow, but as a story of hope. She had given everything for this moment. And in the end, the rain would fall. The waters would return. The earth would heal. And somewhere, deep inside the beacon, the hum of a new future began to sing. The end.